Hello, how are you doing? Over the weekend, I finished reading Sally Rooney's new novel, Intermezzo, so I'm really eager to discuss my thoughts and feelings about this book and overall reaction to it and how I think it compares to Rooney's other novels. And it's really exciting, isn't it, how much excitement there is around the publication of a new Rooney book, because she has such a huge fan base that some bookshops will open up their doors early so readers can be first in line to get copies of it. And I don't know how much of that is just like a marketing gimmick, but there is a real excitement around her new work. But it's almost a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because there's so much discourse around Sally Rooney as an author and the modern subjects that she covers in her books. And so the talk becomes almost distracted by Rooney as a literary phenomenon, and in interviews with her, she'll inevitably be asked about this and her relationship between her real life and the text, and her relationship to literary fame. And I feel like it almost distracts from the craft of her writing and the stories she creates, because she is such a young author, and in my opinion, a very talented one, and one whose books I really enjoy thinking and mulling over, as well as being really engaged by her stories and the characters that she creates. So in this novel, we primarily follow two main characters of brothers. There is Peter, who is in his 30s, and he's a lawyer in Dublin. And then there's his quite younger brother, who's a decade younger than him, called Ivan, who is a chess player and plays in kind of championship tournaments, but has had an uneven sort of rise to fame himself in becoming a kind of chess prodigy, but then feeling like he kind of like missed his mark and didn't have quite like the skill set or the ability to become one of the best chess players in the world, and is very like humble about his position and how much he can achieve in this. And their father has recently died after a long battle with cancer, so a lot of this story is them working through their feelings of grief, but also everything that swells up in the aftermath of the death of a family member, how so many issues from the past and current issues that go on between these family members, how they are trying to work them out, and how these brothers approach life from a very different perspective, being a decade apart in their lives. But it also concerns their romantic entanglements, that Ivan meets a woman named Margaret, who is much older than him. She's in her mid-30s, and an affair that they have. And she has a lot of issues going on in her own life, and also with Peter, that he had a very serious relationship with a woman named Sylvia, who's a literary academic, and she suffered an accident which has left her with chronic pain, and this has created a lot of difficulties in their relationship and a kind of breakup in her relationship with Peter. But Peter also has been having an affair with a much younger woman named Naomi, who's a student and who's kind of struggling financially and struggling to find a place to live. So those are the primary characters in the novel, but we mainly follow Peter and Ivan, their perspectives in this kind of third-person voice, but that's very closely connected to their consciousness and their thoughts. And it does go a bit into Margaret and Sylvia's perspectives, but it primarily follows these two brothers and centers around their interactions with each other. And as in a lot of Rooney's books, there is a lot of dialogue in this, and I think that is what really brings her stories to life, because we follow all that these characters are going through in the moment as they're having conversations with other people, and that reveals so many things about their characters and how they're approaching the world. So even though there is like so much dialogue in this book, and that primarily makes up the narrative, Rooney also uses slightly really different narrative techniques for approaching these different brothers. So with Peter, you get this real kind of like moment to moment experience of his thoughts and things that are occurring around him, and they're conveyed through these big like blocks of text, and so you just follow, and there's no quotation marks used in the dialogue, and so you just have to follow and piece together what is happening. And I found with his narrative sections, I had to really concentrate on what was happening in order to understand everything that was going on all at the same time, where with Ivan's sections, they're laid out much more kind of like neatly, and you have this like point and counterpoint following through his dialogue and his sections and his life, and this almost reflects more his like consciousness and way of approaching the world, in this almost like chess like technique. But he's also someone that finds social situations and dealing with other people very awkward. He's he's very self-conscious individual, and he's often chewing over his thoughts about things that occurred in the past and interactions that he's had, and kind of stressing about these things. So he thinks very carefully about how he interacts with other people and what he says. And as the novel goes on, we learn more about both of these characters' past and their connection with each other, and how they have both changed over time, but we also trace through their interactions in these romantic relationships and through different issues that they're experiencing in their current life, how they are continuing to change and grow as people, and how their relationships to each other and their romantic relationships are like evolving over time. And I think there's such intense intimacy to these conversations, which are very like clever in how she approaches their discussions with each other, because it feels like they're really like thinking through these issues like in the moment. And I think it's what makes Rooney's writing so vibrant, in that her characters almost feel like actors on a stage, in that they come from these different positions, and they are working through these issues in a very like methodical way that's been coordinated, by Rooney to create these different scenes. But as in all like great theatrical productions, and watching an actor perform lines on its stage, if they are convincing in how they are doing it, it's like they are living in the moment and thinking through what they are saying, even though the lines have been almost prescribed for them. And so reading her books almost feels like watching a live performance in this way, as the characters are interacting with each other and reacting to the world around them and things that are occurring around them, but also come with this definite point of view about the world. And there are many scenes in this book of physical and sexual intimacy, where the characters have relationships where they have these intensely intimate moments with each other, and I think Rooney is so skilled at creating these scenes that don't feel like cringeworthy at all, that it feels really true to life. How when you're having intimate relations, that we are kind of working out how our partner is reacting to us, and also experiencing this intense like self-consciousness, and so working through the physicality of having such an intimate moment with each other. And I think it's so beautiful on many different scenes in this book. book, and so she really shows how like the tug and pull of feelings in the moment to moment experience as characters are having these intimate relations, and the strong sense of connection and feelings that are pouring out for another individual in these moments. But then conversely, there's also in many interactions with each other from these moments of real love and emotional outpouring for one another, there are also moments of real hate, and the word hate is used a number of times throughout this book, and I found it so striking in that it really like stood out for me when she uses the word hate, and when characters will say this word and say that they hate someone to their face as they're speaking to them, and so she's working through a lot of these like really strong emotions between these characters. And of course, sometimes when they say they hate one another, they don't really hate one another, but it's more just in the moment, that is what they are feeling, and they feel this like intense sense of anger and injustice, and you can feel all of the backstory of these characters' lives and their relationship over a long period of time, and how it's evolved to this point in their connections to each other, and especially between the characters of the brothers. They have a long and complicated history, and in early on in their life, they felt a strong sense of connection to each other. And when Ivan became a teenager, like with a lot of teenagers, he was going through a lot of changes and difficulties, and adopted many different like positions and feelings about the world, which have continued to change and grow over time. But that how Peter feels about him and is somewhat based on that past experience of knowing Ivan as a teenager and him expressing these different opinions, and so yeah, this she works through a lot of different issues in this book to do with family and grief, but also larger issues to do with capitalism and economic inequality and online lives and social media, but also to do with feminism. That even though this novel centers around two male characters, there's a lot in this book to do with feminism, like in the characters' own lives, and that Peter is a lawyer, and one of his recent cases, which he's become somewhat famous for and is in the news for, is for defending women who experience sexism and fighting for their rights. Whereas Ivan, when he was a teenager, he had a lot of complicated feelings about women and jealousy and feelings of sexual inadequacy, and that expressed itself in kind of like hatred and sexist notions, which he has since worked through. But again, Peter, still relates to him as if these were his opinions, which have very much grown and changed and evolved, and we can see that in his relationship with Margaret, which is a really tender and beautiful relationship in a lot of ways, but is also comes with so many complications because of Margaret's past, and how she is very aware she's in a different position in her life and being older than Ivan, so not wanting to take advantage of him. But then Ivan, who's a very mature young man, feels so strongly towards Margaret and kind of can't see that these radical differences in their ages. I mean, not that radical. There's a 15-year age difference, but that makes quite a difference. And him being a young man who is quite mature, but he can't really, see that how this will create issues in the years going forward. And but they have such a strong connection with each other, and that is conveyed so beautifully. And the same goes for Peter in his relationship with primarily his relationship with these two different women, and his connection with them. But also there's a really interesting figure in Peter and Ivan's mother, who had separated from their father, and she has a new relationship and a new family but also maintains a strong connection with her adult sons, and she does really love and care for them, but also kind of keeps them at an arm's distance. And it's really interesting following their connection with each other and how she kind of mediates her familial connection between her two adult sons, and when her sons come into conflict with each other, how she tries to work through and navigate that. But there's also a character of a dog in this novel, which you can see on the back cover of this UK edition, and who's a very sweet and affectionate dog, who's Ivan's dog, but he's been with his father up until his father's death of cancer, and living with him. And as with anyone's death, there's the practical issues that arise from someone dying, and so now there's the practical issue of what to do with this dog, because Ivan wants to take the dog, but he lives in rented accommodation that doesn't allow pets, and so the dog is staying with the mother, but the mother is like this dog isn't our issue and we don't want to take care of it. And it's so heartbreaking once when Ivan goes to see the mother and check up on the dog, and finds that the dog is being neglected, and it's so heart-wrenching, that moment. And there's many different moments in this book that really stand out to me, that have this like emotional power to them, that I can almost like recall them, in memories that really stand out in my own mind from the past, because I think she captures the immediacy of these moments so strongly, even if there are things that they occurred in the past and that the characters are recalling. So there's this incredibly heartbreaking moment between the brothers when Peter is at a moment of great vulnerability, and Ivan is feeling very mixed up as a teenager, and him trying to figure out his responsibilities and his relationship with his own family, where he kind of like deflects his brother and walks away from him. And it is such a heartbreaking and powerful moment. But there's also many moments of lightness and comedy, as in any like conversations we have with other people, there'll be slight like misunderstandings or missteps, and kind of the confusion around that can bring this kind of lightness to it in people's interactions with each other. So I found this really powerful and moving story, following these many different characters' journeys and all of the things that they are going through in their lives. And I think it probably, I don't know if it stands up as I think better than Normal People. I still think Normal People is kind of like my favorite book, and it's a kind of like perfectly realized story. But Intermezzo is very close to it. I think I did really enjoy Beautiful Worlds. Where Are You? As well, and Conversations with Friends. I felt quite a lot mixed for, but I think it goes to show that Sally Rooney is really like improving as a novelist and a writer, and her books, even though she's only written 4 of them, she's very young. She's only 33, I think, isn't that right? And but yeah, has been such a successful writer, and is writing about things in a really complicated and interesting way, and really engaging in a dialogue with other writers. And so at the end of the book, there are a number of notes of quotations that Rooney has taken and been inspired by. From many different writers, including Wittgenstein, and Edna St. Vincent Millay, and Henry James, and James Joyce, and taking these quotes and incorporating them into the stories of her characters. And I think that really like shows how she's dealing with like a lot of universal themes and emotions and psychological issues that characters are working through, but also in a very modern context. This novel is set, I think, in 2022, so it's very recently, and a lot of the things they are dealing with have to do with the modern world, but many of the issues are also kind of universal and to do with human relationships and human emotions. So I think it's a really powerful and great book. I got thoroughly immersed in it and really enjoyed the experience of it, and felt really close to these characters, and I thought it was a really great experience. So if you have read this book, I would love to know what you think about it, and how you feel it relates to Rooney's other books, how you think it compares to her other books, or if you're interested in reading it now, and exploring Rooney's work in general. If you've never read a book by her, I'd really suggest that. So I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.